So welcome to this week's MMA Brotherhoods podcast. MMA, and specifically Nikito Kai, is more than just a combat sport or self-defense. It's a way of life, and it's filled with lessons that impact our daily lives.
Yeah, absolutely. So these lessons, they're characteristics of honor, respect, discipline, integrity. You know, these are just a couple.
Yeah. So every week we take a piece of Nikito Kai, a piece of MMA, and we chew on it and we see how we can apply its characteristics into our daily lives.
Yes, when we do this, you know, not only will we become physically strong, but mentally strong. You know, what do we always say?
What do we always say? Mind over power. And so this week we have a very, and I can't say that enough times, special guest with us. He is our Grandmaster, Hanshi. Yeah. Let's give him a round of applause. Yeah. Our Grandmaster, Hall of Famer, World Champion, and Trainer of Champions. And that's kind of where we're going to go today is your role as Trainer of Champions. And out of all those that I've just listed, I would think that the Trainer of Champions is probably one of your greatest loves.
Oh, it is, of course. Of course it is. That's everything.
Right on.
Inside and outside the cage and the ring.
Yeah.
You know?
So today we're gonna talk about who's in your corner. You know, the idea is understanding there's a survival strategy. You know, every one of us has a survival strategy. What it takes to survive a day. Every fighter, when they step into the ring, they're developing a survival strategy.
Yes.
In order to survive the battle, right? And there's a difference though between surviving and thriving, and that's kind of where we're going today. You know, so yeah, let's jump into this conversation. Every fighter needs a good corner if he's going to have a chance of finding success in the cage.
Yes.
Yeah. And without a good corner, a fighter is left to figure out things on his own. I was just reading something this morning in preparing for this that said, if you don't have anybody in your corner, don't fight.
Exactly.
You know, why fight alone? When you're fighting alone, man, there's no support.
Well, you don't have the support, and then you don't have the eyes also.
That's where I was going to go with
You
it.
know?
Yeah.
Right? It's just you don't have the eyes. You need the eyes because people looking outside could tell you're inside the battle.
Yeah.
You're too close to it. So the things that you've been programmed in life, or let's talk about fighting, we program everything. Everything is programmed. Everything's repetition. So by the time you get there, we follow what's instinct and what is programmed, but you can't see. You're almost like we talked about before, it's being in the eye of the storm. You know, and that's the most important. Someone could guide you through the eye of the storm when it's needed. So like you're right, you can't go in battle by yourself.
Yeah. And thinking that way, every fighter, when he enters a fight, innately develops a strategy to survive the battle, right? So, and if we were to take it to medieval times, that strategy is life or death. A soldier, same thing.
Yeah.
When they're going out into the field of battle, their strategy is really about life or death, right? And it's necessary to have a survival strategy to survive the battle. But in life, it's also necessary to have a thrival strategy in order to thrive in who you are as well. And so what I really wanted to do is I wanted to get into, you're a corner man.
Yes.
And so what are the rules for being a corner man? Like when it comes to the MMA, UFC, what are the rules for it?
In what way? Are we talking about rules? Like how many people's there? What
Yeah,
we do?
like how many people can you have? What can you do? What can't you do?
So basically, a cornerman, once if it's a non-title fight, you have 3. If it's a title fight, you have 5 in the cornerman. You know, non-titles 3 rounds, and title fights are 5 rounds. So with that said, as far as what we could say, you know, there's just a lot of, as far as rules and regulation, or it's not as much as ethical. So you can't be pounding, you can't be swearing. You just have to be very professional and calm, because you get excited, your fighter's going to get excited. You know, so there's, besides that, you're presenting your team, you're presenting so many different aspects. It's almost like or else you lose control. So the cornerman, us, we always have to keep everything under control, and we have to control and represent ourselves properly so our fighter doesn't get too excited and lose control.
Very interesting. So what is the corner made up of?
In
Like who's in the corner? What are their roles?
Oh, okay. So with that rules, as far as in the MMA world now, majority of the time it's somebody that's familiar with or educated on multiple disciplines, from grappling. When we're talking about grappling, jiu-jitsu, wrestling, judo, those type of aspect, and then also boxing, kickboxing, Muay Thai. So somebody that's able to be rounded overall. But majority of the time you'll have, the reason why there's always three is that you'll have a ground guy, which is the grappling. You'll have somebody with a stand up, and you'll have one that's the main coach that understands the whole concept of the philosophy of mixed martial art.
Okay. All right. So you were talking about being the eyes. Go into that a little bit more. So you're a corner guy, you're a corner man, and you're one that has all the strategies of the stand up or the grappling. In your case, you have Nikito Kai, so that embodies so many different disciplines in one. Let's say you're cornering the Matrix, and you're his set of eyes. What is one important aspect of what you're doing when it's that 1 minute sanctuary time?
So are you talking about during the battle?
Well, during the battle, or even when it's that 1 minute of
in the corner where he's resting and reading strategy. So two things. Once is in the battle, everything happens so fast, so he can't see. It's you're just like too close to it. So the situation that we program is, let's say for example, somebody gets wide on their stance, and the guy starts loading up and able to ground his feet on the cage and be able to load up on shots or have more power and explosion. So of course I'll tell him different codes as far as like he's wide, and then what he'll do is he'll take out the inside leg, or he'll trip him, or get him off balance, or interrupt a situation so the guy can't load up on us. He doesn't see that because it's happening so fast. So we're able to see different things, what the guy is doing right or wrong, and vice versa. Our fighters, if our fighter's moving around with their hands dropping or too much midsection, we have to tell him to keep his hands up, chin down. Just little minor things, like in life, little minor things, adjustment. Then you're fine.
yeah.
So you're looking for like the flaws and stuff.
Yes.
On both sides for what, let's say what, like Sensei Kyler's doing or his opponent's doing, you're looking for those flaws in both, so that way he can better defend himself, or if there's something that he hasn't caught, he can use. So going back to that whole kind of medieval knight thing, kind of like cracks in the armor, sort of that way you can exploit those weaknesses so he can use them. So whether he's loading up or there's a tell that, he's not picking up on or something, because you're literally those outside eyes looking in, he's right here. I mean, oftentimes closer than this. So like you have 3, sometimes 5 people that are all looking around, and they have a much better view of what's going on.
And the biggest part too, and going into that, it's like, I guess almost like in the war, you have the generals and the game planners, and those are basically your eyes. Going back into that situation, you have to look at it too. When we go into a main event in fights, sometimes there's 30, 40,000 people screaming.
Yeah.
So for them to be able to hear you and just recognize your voice with all that commotion,
The chaos.
going, yes, exactly. Isn't that the way also in life?
Oh yeah.
Right? Sometimes we have to channel and find our center. So that's one thing. And going into as far as the cornerman and being the eye and able to get them out, if your fighter gets knocked down or if your fighters get dazed, you have to be able to get him out of that situation. If he had a bad round and he gets to the corner, 30 seconds, you have to calm him back down.
Yeah.
And then you have 30 seconds to build his self-esteem and confidence up and get him back to realize that fight, that round, is like the rearview mirror. That's your past. It has nothing to do with what's about to happen.
Yeah.
And it's happened many times, not with just Sensei Kyler, the Matrix. It's happened with other fighters that we had. We had one situation, and this just popped in my head. We were cornering one of our guys, and he got he got knocked down the first round, and he was dazed. I mean, this guy was like out of it. And we lasted the round. We were getting beat up. Comes back to the corner, and one of my brothers, John Crouch, he goes, "Hey, damn, was that good? Didn't that feel good? That's over with." Now let's go ahead and beat this dude up.
Yeah.
Next round, he chokes the dude.
So cool.
You know what I mean? It's just
Yeah.
calming him down and smiling, like, just different kind of psychology that you do to get him out of snapping, out of being scared, fear, and so forth.
Yeah.
And just say, that's the past.
So what I'm hearing from both of you here is that corner man has to have the information.
Yes.
And that information is going to come, not only by knowing a discipline, but by also having the experience and going before. Having a person that has gone before, that like knowing when to say something, knowing when not to say something.
Yes.
Knowing what's going to bring them down, knowing what's going to raise them up.
Yep.
It's through the experience. It's having somebody with wise counsel, right? Not just somebody that's going to speak into strategies, but somebody with wise counsel in the same thing.
Yeah. Exactly. And can I add something then?
Yeah.
And this is one of the biggest part is that you have to have that trust and respect among each other. So what I'm getting at is like the fighter that I'll use the Matrix. Him and I have a relationship that it's almost like whether you want to call them brothers, whether you want to call them father son, or however you want to call it. That's so very important because he's trusting in you, and you love your fighter so much, it's like your child or somebody you're mentoring, that you don't want nothing happening to them. You take it more emotionally, that if it happens to them, they get hurt. You take it so personal.
Yeah.
And that's what we do as cornermen. We love our fighters. We don't want nothing to happen to them. That's why we train them so hard. And it's the same thing as a child growing up when they're 13, 14, 15 years old, going through teens, and everything's firing in them. You actually get them to show more love to them, but mentor them to guide them as where you've been.
Yeah. As you were saying that, I was thinking of Rocky.
Yeah.
Isn't
it?
He that coach loved Rocky.
Exactly.
And vice versa.
Yep.
And it destroyed him when his coach died.
Yep.
Well, and that's such a powerful driving force, is the love and respect between two people. I mean, it goes into, a lot of like fighting and combat scenarios and stuff. I mean, like in the Marine Corps and stuff like that. I mean, all of us we're all brothers. I mean, we're all basically in the shit together, and I mean, misery loves company, and you don't want to stay in the misery. So you got to find ways to motivate each other. You got to find ways to pick each other up. Sometimes literally, sometimes, if they're exhausted or whatever, you got to pick them up. I mean, that's how we train. That's what we do things. So, I mean, having that mutual love and respect, like Hanshi says, it's sometimes can be the defining factor of what makes a win or a loss.
Yeah. Yeah. And then reflect what it would look like to not have that and just be alone.
Yeah.
Which is crazy because how many men do it alone, right?
Yeah.
It boggles my mind to think what that looks like.
No, when you're talking about being alone in the ring, in the cage, and I'll give you one scenario. When a guy named Castamato passed away, and at the time he put a team together so well for a young fighter that was so dangerous, named Mike Tyson. So when he was a world champion, and he started listening to the other influence around him, he didn't have the coaches. He didn't have the right thing. He was training himself because somebody, I'm not going to mention names, got his head so big that he was the most badass fighter in the world that he don't need nobody. That he's like King Kong. So when he went to this one fight, he was not trained properly. He trained himself. And what he had in the corner were cheerleaders. Is what he had. So when he fought in Japan, there was a guy that wasn't supposed to win that fight named Michael Douglas. Michael Douglas dropped him in the third round or fourth round or something like that. Dropped him. Remember that? He got to the corner. His cornerman that he did not trust, that did not train him and build that relationship as a father, son, or mentor, fighter, or whatever you want to call it, that people didn't know how to get him out of it. And he didn't believe and trust anymore. He was defeated because of not training properly. Nobody was in his corner, like you said. And then the next round, he was knocked out cold by a guy that wasn't supposed to win.
Wow. Yeah.
Well, that goes back to that's really important is the cheerleader thing. And then what you said is that knowledge and that wisdom. So have that knowledge and that wisdom with the trust, and then you have something almost unstoppable. But if you just have cheerleaders that are just mindlessly encouraging you, like that positive reinforcement, that's great. But you need something more substantial than just kind of just throwing out positive and stuff. Like we would do that in the Marine Corps and stuff too, is we wouldn't want the cheerleaders and stuff like that. Is we want to motivate our brothers and our sisters and stuff like that, but you're not a cheerleader.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then let me add a little bit.
Yeah.
Something and the cool part I'm going to add is that it takes that sometime reality or the truth hurts.
Yeah.
So sometimes you have to put that into that individual, whether it's your fighter, since we're talking about fighting, or somebody that you love. Whether it and the one thing that we do, like in our dojo, and I've always proven it, and people will know this part, is that you don't have to be blood to be family. You don't have to be blood to be brothers, but it's earned. It's earned. That's so important. And sometimes it sucks to know the truth, and someone hit you between the eyes and wake you up. And that's what's needed. It's the same thing like when you said like Rocky Balboa, when Mick, his trainer and his mentor passed away.
Yeah.
That believed in him. You got Apollo Creed
Yeah.
that had to step in, tell him there's no tomorrow. There's no tomorrow. It's here. You got to put in the time. This is what we do with also with our fighters right now. We got 5 weeks, 6 weeks with the Chi Matrix.
Yeah.
The mind psychology, it's not the physical aspect as much as what we train. It's the mental aspect of the game. It's most important. They have to believe, but to believe is not just talk to them, because that's BS. You don't want to give, like you're saying, cheerleader to these people. You want to get in the grind. You have to be in the thick of things.
Yeah.
So
And going back to what you were saying, it reminds me of Shihan's story.
Yes. Yeah.
So again, it's not just about a cheerleader, and in some cases, it's not even just about having a guy that knows the strategies and the disciplines, right? So Shihan was telling us when we were having this conversation in our Brotherhood meeting, he was telling us a story about the only time that he had lost, and he had Benny the Jet in his corner.
Yep.
Benny the Jet, like the legend, right?
Exactly.
Like this guy is filled with knowledge. This guy's filled with strategies, and he still lost because he didn't have his brother.
Yeah.
He didn't have you, Hanshi.
Yeah.
He didn't have his Hanshi, his brother, who knew what it would have taken for him to get up on his feet and have the confidence to finish that fight.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah, because you can have that general knowledge and stuff of the fights. You can be the most knowledgeable person in the planet, but if you don't understand your partner in that cage, then it's not catered to help you in certain ways.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. And then let me, and that's perfect you're saying that way, because like when I started in 2010 at the MMA Lab, I'm going to mention that over there because there was only like 5-6 fighters at the time. So there was a guy over there that was just got signed to UFC. And his management team was like one of the best in the world. Told him, was trying to get him to other gyms that were bigger gyms, more fighters, more better quality. He basically told his management, he goes, no, listen, I got my 5 guys over here. I'm good. I'm good. Wow. And that was his brothers that pushed him. This guy became the world champion of lightweight in the UFC, a guy named Ben Henderson. Yeah. Ben Henderson and John Crouch. It's like they weren't named. I mean, Ben Henderson was, right? But John Crouch and some of the fighters that was coming out of there, Grits, you're talking about, my goodness, the Mesa brothers. I mean, they were just like normal fighters, but they were brothers.
Yeah.
And they believed in trust, and they didn't want nobody to hurt. So Ben never went to any other gym, even though there were more experienced and bigger fighters that could bring him to a level. Just, no, I'm good. I'm here.
Wow. So. Yeah. So let's talk about who else is in the corner. You got a cut guy.
Yep. The cut guy is different. What happens now in boxing, you as a trainer, you also have to learn how to do the cut man in boxing. When you get to the professional level of boxing, you hire a cutman.
Okay.
In the UFC has the cutman.
Yeah.
So we don't have to worry about the cutman. But the cutman is so important. And you guys have known is if the guy is really badly injured, if they can't stop that bleeding,
Yeah.
and if they can't stop that nasty cut, then the fight will be stopped.
Yeah.
So sometime if you don't have the right cutman,
Yeah.
you could lose that fight.
Yeah. So you need somebody that's there to actually care for you,
Oh yes.
care for your wounds, care for your injuries.
Oh yes.
You know.
Yeah.
And then I'm thinking, not only are they dealing with the big cuts, but there's the ice. You know.
Yes.
So you're icing them down.
Yep.
You're making sure that 1 minute of sanctuary time is used to build him back up mentally, build him back up physically, give him everything that he needs to heal momentarily
Yes.
to get back out. And
You got to maximize that time.
yeah,
And it's actually, believe it or not, it's not a minute.
okay.
You have less than 30 seconds.
Really?
Because the first 30 seconds, you don't want to talk to your fighter about, you don't want to get excited with the fighter, especially if they're hurt or if you're trying to recover or you're trying to slow down their breathing. Then the next 30 seconds is where you have everything, or 40 seconds at least. And with that, you were saying about the ice, a lot, like let's say, for example, that a certain area, whether it's the face, whether it's the leg for leg kicks, it starts swelling, you better know where to put the ice.
Yeah,
You know, you better know what to stop and so forth. So there's so many moving components within that 30 to 40 seconds.
yeah. So I've noticed when Kyler fights the Matrix,
I pray a lot.
yeah, but I've noticed one huge aspect of what's in his corner is the maniac.
Yes.
And I would imagine that his role is not just to bring more eyes, which he does. Why is the maniac there?
The maniac's there because in a lot of things, like when we have the fight week is so important. So they have fun.
Yeah.
Because everything in life is not focusing and stressing over the battle or the meeting or whatever is going to be happening on that Saturday. That's going to happen. We know the result already, meaning that we just go get it. Win, lose, or draw, we're going to go get it. We're going to do best what we're doing, what we program. But during that week, that Maniac and Kai Matrix, they're like the biggest kids. They have to keep each other accountable. They have fun. They joke. They just keep the mind off what's about to happen.
Alleviate that tension a little bit.
Exactly. That's why they joke around a lot. It's the weirdest thing. It's the coolest thing.
Marcus is a hoot, man.
Oh man, he's something else. But
He's so
he's
funny.
like one of the biggest kids out there, and he still does. And his heart is so strong and it's so big, and he's signed in the UFC.
Yeah.
This kid's undefeated in the UFC. Once it comes to training, he trains hard, he fights hard, but outside of all the thing, it's incredible.
I would think that he brings a lot of balance
Yes, he does.
to Kyler.
That's important.
He not only does he bring that friendship that's needed, that warrior that's in the side, that soldier that's alongside you, going through the battle, not just your mentors and your wise counsel, but somebody that's actually in the thick of it with you, right?
Yep.
But he also brings the balance of a family
Oh yeah.
and character and all these things. He's the right person to hang around with. He's the right influence.
That's it. That's the thing. More years go by, they're like brothers.
Yeah.
It comes down to that. They're not blood. They don't have to,
Yeah,
but they are brothers.
yeah. So great.